another attack, especially when your partner or opponent is pulling up forcefully on you. There's a modified fireman's carry or outside fireman's carry. If I'm in this position here, or perhaps in this position, and Colby is really pulling up hard, what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to attack this far leg here. I'm going to hang on to the chin though. I'm not going to lose the chin. I've also got to slide my shoulder somewhat underneath his armpit here too. So I'm in this position. Notice I'm pushing hard here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come underneath here to this position, throw. Again, this is one of those positions that as Colby is beating me because he's powering up and there's only so much longer I'm going to be able to keep him down, I'm going to transition to attack his legs. I'm pulling down here, he's coming up. Notice, if I just try to come through, that's not going to happen. I've got to slide and give myself a little bit of play here so I can get my shoulder somewhat underneath. That's crucial. So from here, I'm tugging. Colby's powering up. From here, I keep holding the chin to this position, and I can come through. You'll notice I'm upright. I'm not down on my haunches here. When I come through, I'm in tight. I want to lift him up off of his feet by tugging down on his head. And because I'm upright here, when I do that initial attack, he should have his weight more on his toes than just solidly planted. And then I'm going to continue through, pulling down on his head and chin, lifting up on his leg or up his crotch in this direction here. So I'm in here, I'm tugging. Colby's powering up. I got to get past the shoulder here, so I'm going to pull. I shove this arm, and I get my shoulder underneath as best I can. If I just try to reach, I'm not going to get through. You'll notice my shoulder still is on top here. So I've got to give myself enough room, and I do that by coming under here. Right under, I got to give myself the room, so I'm going to slide a little bit out. I've got a little bit of play with my shoulder there to get underneath. In this position, tugging. Colby comes up from here. Now, if Colby defends on that, particularly if he powers up enough to get out as I'm coming through, I come through outside single, transition to a double, and then finish as we talked about in some of the previous instructionals, for example, on the head outside single. Alternatively, as I'm coming through, if I'm coming through here, I could also just transition if he powers out to a double leg attack here and finish. My goal now isn't to go over the outside single or the double leg per se, because we've already gone over that in a prior instructional. Just simply to say that if your opponent does muscle his way out, especially if you can't hold on and control the head, all is not lost. You transition to the leg, either a head outside single or to a double leg. More times than not, it's probably going to be the head outside single, because you'll have probably committed your attack through his crotch or through to that far outside leg there as you attempt that outside fireman's. Now, another situation, if my opponent is powering his way up, and again, I'm always endeavoring to pull him down. He's got to really do what he can to keep his head up, yet still to maintain good position so that he's not going back on his heels too far where he's going to be very vulnerable. And that's a difficult task for him, because Colby is having to basically support his weight as well as a good part of my weight. Now, sometimes when he pops up like this, instead of coming under for the outside fireman's, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hang down. I'm hanging. What I'm going to do now is, notice his weight is pretty much on both legs equally. As he's coming up, I'm going to shift it to this leg by just pushing my shoulder in, so that I'm going to guide his head. As he's coming up, I want to push his head over slightly towards the leg I'm going to attack. And that leg is the side that I have arm control on. So I'm tugging here, I'm tugging, and he's coming up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to skip in. I'm not going to reach. I've got to skip in, so I'm going to get this foot close to this foot here as he comes up. So he powers up, I'm to this position here. I want you to notice my shoulder is going to hit him here. I'm going to cup here. And I want you to notice too, this foot, I prefer not hit the mat. I prefer it just sort of cup behind his Achilles, basically, or calf to calf, Achilles to Achilles. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hop. I'm just going to hop forward. It's also crucial, as I do this type of an attack, that I don't reach, because if the angle of my body is such that my chest is exposed up and my back is exposed down, I'm coming down. So, when I leap into this, and this is a very dynamic movement, I'm hanging, Colby's beating me, but I'm hanging as hard as I can, and he's lifting me up. At that point, he's having a lot of power pulling up. I'm going to shift his weight to that head, and at the last moment, right when I feel his head popping out, I'm going to hop in. And I want to hop in with my chest down, my back up slightly. In other words, my body at this type of an angle, as opposed to my chest up and my back down. I'm looking forward. I prefer not to put this to the mat, because I'm just going to keep hopping, and I try to keep the leg that I have hooked still. So if I continue to hop forward from my perspective, I'm going to go over his point of balance and he'll fall down. So I'm hanging, and this is, again, this isn't like this where he comes out, I let him out, opportunity lost at that point. What I need to do is really, I'm holding it on to the last second, and I'm pushing, and then I'm going to come right there, and I'm going to drive through. You'll notice, he really had to get his head out at the last moment there, and I make it very difficult, and it's that time where I'm pushing and driving in. So I'm not just letting him pop his head out, having a neutral position, and then attacking. I'm trying to guide his head as he's pulling it out, keeping his weight over this foot so that he has less mobility backwards as I skip in to then try to trip and throw him down to the mat. Another option when your opponent is powering up on you is an inside trip. I'm hanging down here, pulling him down. When Colby pops up, you'll notice when he comes up, typically his weight is pretty much on the rear part of his feet or towards his heels. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and go an inside trip. As I do that, I do want to block this arm if I can. And I'm going to do that by, as he pops out, just driving my arm down, okay, and locking up. I'm not so concerned about locking. I'm just concerned about trapping that arm, okay. So we're in this position. I'm hanging down, pulling him down, pulling him down. Colby powers up. When he comes up, again, I'm not going to let him up and try to come in. The opportunity is going to be lost because he's going to be able to recover his position. I've got to begin initiating that trip just like I initiated that last trip or throw, as he's still struggling to get out of my hold. I'm tugging down here. Colby is powering up. And again, notice too, as he powers up, he drags me closer to him typically. And so I'm sagging. I'm going to let him up. And as I let him up, I'm going to come in with my inside trip. So sagging here. Now, notice, I'm going to, in all likelihood, be in the guard from this position. Simply though, be aware that this is a way of at least getting your opponent back down to the ground, should that be your main goal at that point, especially if you feel comfortable fighting from the guard. Another attack from this position is simply a variation of when we had our opponent's head and ratcheted them down to the mat. And that's the same thing we're going to do here. And I like this a lot because it's demoralizing to your opponent, and it's a fairly powerful type of movement. And for a little guy like myself, I find that even with bigger people, I can generate a fair amount of force doing this. So it's an efficient kind of move. Again, not a real pretty move, but it gets the job done, and that's the bottom line. So I'm in this position here. Again, as we had discussed before, one option is to push and get a reaction and to tug my opponent down. And you'll notice I've got a good thing to pull against here, against the back of his arm. Now, the alternative is more of a ratcheting, a ratcheting motion, especially if my opponent is pretty powerful and is pulling me up. When I pull down, I give him a pop here, and I get him to this level. And then I'm going to give him another pop, a little lower, and then another pop, a little lower. And I'm going to keep doing that. Each time I'm very conscious of not letting him, once I pull him down, I'm very conscious of not letting him come back up again. So each step is down, hold him at that level, down, hold him at that level. And of course, naturally, I'm trying to drag him forward at the same time. So it's kind of like a stepwise kind of motion that he's going in ultimately. And so that's, I think, a very efficient type of movement. And it just bam, 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 and you just keep getting lower and lower. Naturally, I'm concerned about my leg here. I just make sure my opponent can't grab that. And that is very difficult if I've got good position here to the side from here. Grab my leg. He doesn't have much grip or much purchase there. It's just bam, bam, bam. Down, down, down to the mat.